Are we on? 5 police officers shot, 1 killed in a New Hampshire standoff. Queen City News Staff Online Edition is up. 1 police officer was killed and 4 of the other 5 police officers were wounded as the officers tried to serve a warrant Thursday at a home in Greenland, New Hampshire, during a drug bust around dinner time in a New Hampshire town near the Massachusetts border. Officials said Greenland police officer Michael Maloney, 48 years old, was killed and 4 other officers were injured when Colin Muthrie opened fire on them. And the funeral for Michael Maloney is that tomorrow, Glenn?
Tomorrow around, I believe it's around noon.
Tomorrow at noon?
I think so, yes. I know it is tomorrow.
Michael,
He's going to retire on Friday.
okay, so Michael Maloney killed in the line of duty. So we wanted to open the show tonight by honoring him. Chief Michael Maloney in Greenland, New Hampshire, right before he was about to retire, unfortunately, taken down in the line of duty in a drug bust. So terrible tragedy. But it is out. This is out in the new Queen City Examiner. And I'm joined by Glenn R.J. Willett on this television edition, Matt Connarton Unleashed, for April 18th, 2012. And Glenn, congratulations on publishing another edition.
All they got to do is go to qcenews.com. That's qcenews.com. Scroll down to the online edition, and it's going to be called April 2012 Online Edition.
Yes. Yeah, so congratulations on that. The paper is great, and you can access it online. And like I said, welcome to another edition of the television edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed. This is now episode 4.
It's 4, but 2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row, yeah. We're on a steady stream of doing this now Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time here at the QCEnews.com studio. So if you're watching this on QCEnews.com or IPMNation.com, thank you so much for joining us for the television edition. Chris isn't with us tonight. He's busy, so it's just Glenn and I, but we have lots and lots to talk about.
Where are we? In someone's kitchen?
It's like we're at a kitchen table discussing politics.
Is that in New Hampshire way?
As so many families do. We don't have any food though. That's well, I have a beverage there, but
so do I.
But there's food upstairs at what is it called? There's an event going on.
Midtown Cafe.
Midtown Cafe, which is upstairs, and they've been featured on We'll Let It Large, Gone Global.
Yes, they have. We do our cooking from there.
Yes, exactly. So We'll Let It Large, Gone Global, of course, 8 p.m. Friday nights here at the QCNews.com studio.
And Verbal Ejaculations on Sunday night from 9:30 to 11:30ish.
Yeah, whenever that ends. All times Eastern, of course. And there's going to be more programming in the future. Is that correct, Glenn?
Yes.
At QCNews.com?
As we speak, there are programs in the play.
Very good, very good. And boy, not to start the show off with even more bad news, but for anyone who hasn't heard, Dick Clark did pass away at age 82. Apparently, it was a massive heart attack. He had the stroke that he had was in 2004, I believe.
Yeah, it was quite a long time ago.
Yeah,
and you know, he had to learn how to re-talk and everything. He had had a bad stroke.
Yeah.
They anticipated he wasn't going to survive then, so he definitely was a strong fighter.
He lived a long life, and
he enjoyed his life. He was always in entertainment, an entertainer, and discovered a lot of people.
He did, yes. I used to watch American Bandstand when I was a kid. Of course, it had been on, I think, since the 1950s.
Yeah, he was a little bit different than Ed Sullivan, but important still indeed.
Yes, yes. Probably what he's best known for, but the guy did a lot of stuff. He
did.
I remember when I was a kid, he hosted, $10,000 Pyramid, the game show, and he produced a ton of stuff. Definitely a workaholic. Someone who just really liked to work. Which
I used to like the American Bandstand that he did.
Absolutely. So rest in peace, Dick Clark, 82, leaving us today. And anybody else die that I don't know about? Hopefully not.
You and I are still here.
We're still here. Absolutely. Although today on Norman Friends, you know Joan, who calls and her Al's friend Joan? Well, she called, and I don't remember what precipitated it, but for some reason, she said something that made it sound like she was dead. So I said something about, Joan, are you calling us from beyond the grave? And the thing about Joan is, and if you've
Did
never,
she catch it?
well, the thing is, Joan, if you've ever watched Norm and Friends or listened to the podcast, as some people will know, Joan is a frequent caller. She's in love with Al Caprillion, our weatherman.
Definitely, and she's married.
And she is married, yes, and she's a little, she's older and a little.
Oh, it has nothing to do with age. Trust me.
Yeah, she's just crazy. But
Well, I didn't say that.
but I did. But sometimes though, she's a little more lucid than others. And today, she was able to kind of roll with the joke. Because I asked her if she was calling from beyond the grave, and she said, "Yes, I'm dead, and I'm calling from beyond the grave, and I'm calling to haunt you or something." She was with me on it, so it was interesting. But Joan isn't actually dead, for anyone who's concerned.
Wouldn't it be funny if you woke up in the morning and the obituary was in the paper and said, "Oh my gosh, she did call me from beyond the grave"?
Would that not be hilarious? I
You'd
would
never forget that. Huh?
I would never forget that. I will wake up tomorrow and Joan is dead.
No, we don't wish that on you, John.
No,
wish
no,
that
no.
on anybody.
Glenn was just saying it would be hilarious if it
It would
happened.
be
That's all.
hilarious.
Yes. Glenn, you have a dark sense of humor today. No, this is the good.
That's what happens when you see a doctor.
Oh no! Did you see the doctor today?
Today I saw a doctor.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll talk about that after.
I'm
You
fine.
Give me the update. Are you good? Good. What else? I guess Glenn is not yet heard, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you have probably heard, and some of you have not. The Ted Nugent kerfuffle. Now, Glenn is not familiar with Ted Nugent, but Ted Nugent, Glenn, is a classic rock artist who is responsible for such really intelligent and intellectual lyrics like Wang Bang, Sweet Poontang, and things like that. Just a true musical genius. Not really. But
You said it, I didn't.
yeah, not I don't really I think he sucks, to be honest. But Ted Nugent started in the 70s. He was in a band called the Amboy Dukes, then had a solo career. Basic 3-chord rock. He's also very, very right-wing, which is unusual. Most musicians, unless they're country and western musicians, for example, musicians tend to be liberal. Creative people in general, I think, tend to be more liberal than conservative. But Ted is very out with his conservatism, very extreme right-wing. Very, very pro-gun, spokesman for the NRA, very pro-Second Amendment. As am I, by the way. I'm also very pro-Second Amendment. But Ted's, Ted really pushes it, and he's a big hunter and whatnot, which again I support. I personally could never go out in the woods and kill things, but animals are part of the food chain. I have no problem with it, and I do eat meat, so I would never knock him for that. Some people do knock him for that. I do not. But
someone has to shoot them when you're not going to eat the meat.
It's what? I'm sorry?
Someone has to kill those animals for food, or you won't have a food supply.
Right, exactly. Or as I've heard Ted Nugent himself say, you have to kill it before you can grill it. And it's true. And it's important, too, for the management of the species and whatnot. Otherwise, some of the population dies. Yeah, well, that's true. The deer might see it differently. But it's like George Carlin once said, if you think hunting's a sport, arm the deer. Then you've got a real sport. Mm-hmm. But this is Glenn has not yet heard. I mentioned to Glenn before we went on the air that I wanted to discuss Ted's comments that have caused this kerfuffle, which is my new favorite word. Glenn had not heard this yet. Kerfuffle, yes. It almost sounds like a pastry, but it doesn't mean that. Glenn had not yet heard Ted Nugent's comments, and I said, well, I don't want to tell you until we're on the air because I want your candid up to the second reaction to this, Glenn, because I think this is shocking. And Ted Nugent's no stranger to saying shocking things. And Ted Nugent, by the way, he's the kind of conservative who it's not enough for him to disagree with liberals. It's not enough for him to even necessarily be dismissive or talk down to liberals or anything like that. He's the type of conservative who hates liberals, who thinks liberals are all communists, who thinks that liberals are America-hating, anti-patriots. He's that kind of conservative. That's who we're dealing with. And I find it offensive, and I myself am not a liberal. I do hold some liberal positions, but I also hold some conservative positions, and I'm basically a centrist. But this kind of attitude from conservatives does offend me. Just as when liberals talk about conservatives like they're all just a bunch of rednecks or whatever. I also find that offensive because I know a lot of very smart, intellectual conservatives, even though I may disagree with them a lot, ideologically speaking.
Well, no matter which party you belong to, either if you belong to the regular party like the Republican or the Democratic Party, you'll have some people that are far to the right, too far to the right, and you have others that are too far to the left. And it's hard today in this day and age to get a balance, and that's why I'm very happy that we now have more undeclared registered voters as independents than anything else. I'm hoping that that means that people are getting it.
Yes.
And they want us to get back to a balance.
40% now nationally. 40% of Americans.
And in New Hampshire, it's 44.
Which is great. That's great. I'm very encouraged by that. The parties have failed us, both of them.
Yes.
This is from USA Today, and I'll read this to you, Glenn, because you're hearing this for the first time, and for the audience. This is just a very short article. USA Today is great, by the way, if you like lots of pictures and graphs to go with your news. From USA Today, rocker Ted Nugent's controversial remarks about President Obama this weekend have put a spotlight on his support of Mitt Romney as the likely GOP presidential nominee ratchets up his White House campaign. Nugent slammed the Obama administration and singled out 4 members of the Supreme Court as not supporting the Constitution during his remarks at the National Rifle Association's annual conference in St. Louis. Nugent, best known for his hit Cat Scratch Fever, yeah, I don't like the song either, is an NRA board member. Here's what he said. And he said this on a radio show, by the way, that was being broadcast at this event. This is, quote, "If you want more of those kinds of evil, anti-American people in the Supreme Court, then don't get involved and let Obama take office again. Because I'll tell you this right now, if Barack Obama becomes the president in November again, I will either be dead or in jail by this time next year." Now, Glenn,
I heard that comment.
You did hear that.
Where did I hear that? Either yesterday or today, on either TV or radio.
It's been big news. Now, let me ask you, Glenn, but before we read the rest of this article, what's your initial, when you hear that, what does it sound like Ted is saying there? What do you get from that? What is he planning to do? What is his intention?
Well, just think of what happened in Norway. What one man did, because he didn't believe in his mind that the Taliban ban or any of the not necessarily the Taliban, but the help me out here, the name of the religion.
The Islamic fundamentalists?
The Islamic religion.
Okay.
Anybody who is Islamic should not live in Norway. And, well, who made that rule? And so he decided that he was going to punish the government. So who did he kill? 69 young American men and women.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did that punish Norway? And now he's going to trial, and he's sobbing that he didn't commit a crime. He just taught a lesson to. But when he did hear his video that he had on the net last year before he committed the crime, then he saw he was more emotional on his stuff than what he actually did. No emotions on killing anybody.
Right.
They deserved it. And sometimes when you hear people speak like that, it doesn't mean they're going to do anything bad, but you have to wonder, what are you talking about?
Right.
It's scary.
It is scary. Well, you hit on something very important there, because he's an NRA board member. People who are very pro-gun love Ted Nugent and his outspokenness. So what does it sound like he's communicating to these people who are so pro-Ted Nugent, who love Ted Nugent? Whether they like his music or not, they love him. It sounds like he's inciting them to do something violent. And it sounds
that way.
It sounds that way. Now, if you take this at face value, it sounds to me like he's threatening to assassinate the president. He's saying if Obama wins a second term, he'll either be dead or in jail by this time next year.
Yeah,
So
those are pretty strong words.
well, it's also illegal to talk that way. the First Amendment has all kinds of exceptions. The classic example, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. The First Amendment is not absolute. It's very, very close to being absolute, as it should be, but it's not absolute. There are common sense exceptions. One of those exceptions, in addition to the fire in a theater, is you cannot publicly threaten the president. If you do, the Secret Service will come knocking on your door. You cannot go around threatening, implying, insinuating, alluding to thoughts of actually killing the President of the United States. That sounds like that's what Ted is saying here.
First of all, violence does not solve anything.
Right.
If anything, it makes things worse.
Right.
That's why we need a balance in this country. You need to have people that have common sense. And I think that what our country hurts right now and cries for is more of a discussion. There's no more discussion. They go to Congress and they pass bills so fast they don't even discuss it because they don't want us to be part of it.
Right. That is true. I'll read these next few paragraphs because Mitt Romney's reaction to this is interesting. Nugent's comments sparked an outcry from Obama's allies. Democratic National Committee Chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz said in an email to supporters that Nugent's remarks were, quote, clearly beyond the pale, unquote, and called on Romney to denounce them. Andrea Soul, a spokeswoman for the Romney campaign, said in a statement, quote, divisive language is offensive, no matter what side of the political aisle it comes from. Mitt Romney believes everyone needs to be civil, unquote. Doesn't this
bring down the rhetoric?
Well, but the response though, the response from the Romney campaign, could they have issued a more vanilla, bland response that clearly, I mean, this could have been Romney's Sister Souljah moment. Remember Sister Souljah when Bill Clinton spoke up against her back in the 90s and during the 92 campaign, and that proved to people that, well, Clinton just doesn't go along with his liberal base on everything. Sister Souljah said some things that were out of line. She was a rapper back then that, outside of that little mini scandal, no one had ever really heard of her, but she said some things about black militancy or something, and Clinton said, well, no, that's going too far. And people praised him for that. This could have been Romney's Sister Souljah moment. Mitt Romney could have said, no, Ted Nugent went too far. By the way, this was just after Ted Nugent had officially announced his endorsement for Mitt Romney because he just hates Obama so much. This could have been Romney's Sister Souljah moment to prove that he has something between his legs, to prove that he's willing to stick up for some sort of principle, which he might as well do. He's already got the nomination sewn up. Now he's got a tack to the middle for the general election campaign anyway, but instead he whiffs on it. He sends a spokesman out to say something. He has nothing to say about it. What is this? This is disgraceful.
In fact, there was a similar event that happened last week where a young lady on the Democratic side, who's not a member of the Obama campaign, stated that Ann Romney never worked a day in her life, and she's a mother who raised 5 boys.
Right.
And Obama, the president, came out and said, we all know how hard it is to raise a family. And that shouldn't be said. And so he denied. I wouldn't say he denied. He came out and he became that sister and saying, no, this is not the way to go about it.
Right, and they immediately distanced themselves from Hillary Rosen, who made the comment.
Hillary Rosen. I'm kind of shocked that Romney reacted that way, because you're right. He missed an opportunity.
Yes.
We can be civil,
Right.
I mean,
well, this is far beyond. And by the way, I defended Hillary Rosen because, in my opinion, her comments were taken way out of context. But this is the problem. As much as I try to play the middle and not pick a side in terms of picking parties, because I have opinions about individual issues that put me all over the map, ideologically speaking, which is why I don't fit into a particular party. That's why I had to leave the Democratic Party, because it got too liberal for me. And that's why I'm now an independent. I'll never be a Republican. But But
You're not conservative enough.
no, I'm not. I'm not. I'm truly not. Especially in
Neither
today's.
is Ronald Reagan.
I know that's true. Reagan's tax policy today, they'd call him a liberal.
Well, in fact,
You could say that about Bush Senior too.
That's right. In fact, it's a matter of the polls now that if Reagan were to be the candidate to run on the GOP, he wouldn't get it.
Right.
He'd be too liberal.
Which is funny because he's their big conservative hero.
He's their hero.
Yeah.
See how much we've changed in what? Less than 20 years?
Oh yeah. The polarization is incredible. But here's the thing, and this is where I will be very critical of people on the right. They muster up all this fake, phony outrage that you can tell isn't even genuine, but it's politically smart. Over Hillary Rosen's comments, she makes a comment about Ann Romney not working a day in her life. And she was trying to make the point, by the way, that Ann Romney, it wasn't a swipe at stay-at-home moms like the right tried to turn it into. That's not what it was. It clearly, she was talking about how Ann Romney has never had never known the struggle of having to hold down a full-time job while raising children.
But she has had her struggles.
But she has had her struggles, yes, to be fair, yes. But Hillary Rosen was clearly saying that Ann Romney doesn't know what working women go through in this country who are also raising a family. That was the point she was trying to make. But the right musters up all this fake outrage because it's smart politically. Just like they mustered up all this fake outrage over something Bill Maher said. Bill Maher tells a joke. He's a freaking comedian, but he tells a joke that insults Republicans, and they're outraged, and they want the Obama campaign to give back all the campaign money that Bill Maher donated. They're outraged that Robert De Niro made a joke about the president, about the country not being ready to have a white first lady, in reference to Michelle Obama being black, as we currently have a black first lady. I thought it was funny. Oh, but on the right, there's outrage. Newt Gingrich's going around saying, Robert De Niro should apologize, and he made a joke. But they will see.
Look what
Limbaugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, she. Right. It's the double standard. Limbaugh calls Sandra Fluke a slut, and he's just he was just trying to make a point.
It's played on both sides, though.
Right. Right.
Unfortunately,
But I've never seen it this blatant. I've never seen it this blatant as the way the Republicans are currently doing it now, where they seize on anything. It's almost desperate. It's pathetic in a way. The silly, stupid stuff they seize on to be outraged about. We're so upset over this and that. But then Nugent threatens to kill. Nugent is threatening to assassinate. Now, obviously, he's not going to do it. He's talking out of his ass. He's talking like a big shot. Like the big alpha male that he has to be. He probably is a little small between the pants, and this is how he overcompensates. And whatever his reason, he's threatening to assassinate the president. Mm-hmm. And what do I hear from the right? The Romney campaign can't even, it's like you can hear crickets chirping. They have nothing to say. And this bland, stupid little statement from Andrea Saul says nothing. It's like, divisive language is bad, and both sides need to be civil.
Well, my advice to you, young man, is that get used to it. It's going to get worse. The game is just beginning.
I almost don't know if it can. This is pretty bad. This is pretty bad.
I'm just trying to tell you how scary it is now.
Yeah.
Wait till November.
Yeah.
This election is going to be so close, within margins of a percentage or a little bit maybe more. Mm-hmm. 1 or 2 percentage at the most. Such a close election. It'll be as close as Gore and George Bush II were.
Yes.
And when it gets that way, we know what happened the last time. It actually went to the Supreme Court. We don't want to see that again because that's not our democracy, with former democracy. And so it's going to have to be dirty for someone to win.
Yes.
So both sides are going to come out fighting with their guns fully loaded. And now I'm talking their voices. It's sad because instead of talking about the issues that we have here in America and talk about solving them, we hear all these half-truths. Mm-hmm. They spend millions of dollars campaign funding, which some of us support, because some of it comes out of our taxes. And for what? Not to solve or talk about the issues.
Right.
Talk about things that aren't even important. It's not what matters right now. Those aren't the issues. But that's what they're raising as issues. They won't even consent to talking about the real issues, the economic issues, the jobs, the deficit, stuff like that.
Right. And there is a real conversation to be had.
Yes, there certainly
about
is.
The economy. I could sit here I could sit here myself and argue it from either side, and I think be pretty convincing. I could argue it from the side of the Obamaites and say, look, we're going in the right direction. We're coming out of the worst recession since the Great Depression. Takes a little time to turn the Titanic around. Um, I realize I just quoted, I think, a Celine Dion song, and I apologize, or maybe it was Amy Grant, but it's
Why
true.
should you apologize?
Well, because I hate that. But anyway, and we are moving in the right direction. Unemployment's coming down. We've had consistent job growth since Obama took office. So yes, the economy is bad. It's not improving fast enough, but it is improving.
Mhm.
We're going in the right direction. I could make that argument from the left. I could also make the argument from the right that this is the slowest, most anemic recovery from a recession that we've ever seen.
But
So,
common sense says it's to be expected. It's the worst recession since
Right,
the Big
right.
Depression.
right,
So it's
absolutely.
going to take longer for us to correct the problem. And
Absolutely.
as long as they discuss non-valid reasons and not discuss the real issues and how to solve it, it's going to take even longer. Look what
Right.
happened in March. The March results for unemployment was we didn't meet what we wanted.
Yeah, disappointing.
Now, last week, for 4 days in a row, the Wall Street went down, down, down because they were anticipating a slow because of the bonds that were going to fail in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yesterday they solved that problem. Their bonds aren't going to stay. Someone came to the rescue.
Yes.
Well, yesterday we went back over and about 1,300,
Right.
and all of a sudden,
The
last
Dow
week
Jones.
it was Obama's fault that we're going down, and now that we're going back up,
Yeah.
do you see them say, "I have to apologize"? No, it's
No.
still his fault.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
But when
That's how the
Bush,
game is played.
when Bush was in power, George Bush II, and we paid $4 or plus for gasoline,
Mm-hmm.
I remember everybody, specifically the Democrats, saying it's Bush's fault. And now that we're paying $4 or close to it, in some places more than $4 in some states like Chicago and California, Illinois and California, they're saying it's Obama's fault. But the reality is the president does not rule on the price of fuel.
Exactly. Yes. It's really neither of their fault.
But I think the one you need to blame the most is not the parties, because they're both to blame.
Right.
The Congress. 2 weeks ago, last Thursday, they voted to give the big oil corporations a $4 billion subsidy after they know,
Mm-hmm.
for example, Mobil Exxon makes $4 million per hour.
Right.
Do they need it? If it would have guaranteed me that they were going to slash the cost of gasoline,
Mm-hmm.
hip hip hooray,
Right.
did that happen?
No. Of course not.
It's wrong.
Right. Well, the what you just talked about is a great example. It illustrates two key points that I've discussed a lot on the show. The first point is, because everyone is so polarized, and this is something that drives people like me and you too, Glenn. I know this is part of why we're independents and why we refuse to be a part of a party. There is no objective reality anymore for people who subscribe to a specific ideology and will not accept any outside information that in any way contradicts what they already so firmly believe. And it's a great example. When Bush was president and gas prices went up, you have Democrats saying it's all Bush's fault, and Republicans saying, no, it's not. The president has no control over gas prices. Now we have a Democrat in the White House. Gas prices are very high. Same thing in reverse. Now you have Republicans saying, oh, it's all Obama's fault. And Democrats saying, no, the president has nothing to do with gas prices. And there's no objective reality.
Yeah,
everyone
it's a
sees
vicious circle.
everything through their own ideological prism. It's so frustrating.
Do you remember when Clinton was around and when he was president, specifically his last term, the last 4 years,
Mhm.
the Republicans had the House and Senate. They would not allow a 58 member House rule for voting. It had to be 60.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny now that the House is Republican and the Senate is it's so marginal, but the House is Republican. They won't allow the Democrats either. So it doesn't matter who's in power. They play the same game.
Absolutely.
It's a vicious circle, and the parties have failed us.
Absolutely.
They're not working in our best interest. They each have their own political agendas that has nothing to do with America, not the problems that actually exist.
Right. Well, that goes to your second point. Wow, now I forgot. I lost track of what the other thing was in there that I wanted to seize on. Oh, I'm sorry. It was yes. The other thing. It's the other thing I've talked about a lot on this show. That's in what you were talking about with the oil subsidy. Is that that's another example of how look, folks. I don't care how much you may really firmly believe in the person that you vote for to send to Washington, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat. When you vote for whoever it is that you vote for to send to represent you to Washington, whether it be in the United States Congress, whether it be in the White House, whether it be in the House or Senate and the Congress, whatever it is.
Any election, local election, whatever.
Well, I think there's a lot of good people on the local level and the state level because I've met a lot of them. But I think once you get to the federal level, I think this is where the real problem is that
it's where all your lobbyists are.
Exactly. Yes. And that's who really runs the country.
Mm-hmm.
The lobbyists. When you vote for whoever it is that to send to Washington, you are not voting. You are not voting no matter how much you think you might believe in that person and how honest they are and how much integrity they have and how they're really looking out for you. You are not voting for someone to represent you. You are voting for someone to represent whatever group of special interests and lobbyists and corporations and whatever else. That's who you're voting for. You're voting for what corporations, which oil companies you want represented, what special interest groups, whether it's ALEC, who we're hearing about a lot in the news, or whatever it is, big oil, big pharma, the pharmaceutical industry definitely has a big stake in running Washington. That's who you're voting for. I mean, I get a chuckle when I hear people say, and again, I'm talking about at the federal level, but when I hear people say, and they do it on both sides, I'll hear Democrats say, oh, Republicans, they just care about they just care about protecting rich people and they just care about the corporations and all that. It's the Democrats. They're looking out for the little guy. They're looking out for me. So that's why I'm a Democrat. That's why I vote Democrat. And I hear Republicans say, oh, Democrats, they're a bunch of commies. They just care about big government. They want the government running our lives. Now, Republicans, they're the ones looking out for the little guy. They're the ones looking out for me. That's why I vote for Republican. Guess what? You're all both half right and half wrong. You're half right in that, yeah, whichever party you think is not looking out for you, you're right. They're not looking out for you. But you're also wrong because the party that you do think is looking out for you is not, because nobody's looking out for you. Until we start electing more independents, nobody's looking out for you.
It's like saying you have a half a glass of water that's half full, half empty. Is there one better than the other? You will never get a full glass of water if half of it is empty.
Right.
So there's no balance.
Right.
They're both equal.
Yes.
There's no balance because one is fighting to empty, the other one's fighting to fill it. I mean,
right, yeah.
It's not a very good logical, but I'll even go one step further. Here's a shocker.
Yeah.
Vous pensez-vous, Dio, que les hommes et les madames à la Congrès travaillent pour vous? Do you really think that the men and women in Congress are working for you? No. They are working for the lobbyists. That was French.
Okay, yeah. I figured as much, yes. And all the rhetoric is out of control. I have another example here of some out of control rhetoric. Now, this does not rise to the level of Ted Nugent threatening to assassinate our president. But this is, did you hear this, Glenn? And this is from Reuters. This has been in the news a bit. U.S. Republican has no regrets calling Democrats communists. U.S. Congressman Alan West on Tuesday refused to back away from earlier remarks to constituents in Florida that dozens of Democrats, this sounds like McCarthyism, that dozens of Democrats in the U.S. House of Representatives were communists. The freshman Republican, who is backed by conservative Tea Party activists, well, big surprise, was asked at a forum whether he had second thoughts about calling the 78 members of the House Progressive Caucus communists. I don't regret it whatsoever, said West, who is facing a tough race for re-election in November. There's a very thin line between communism, progressivism, Marxism, socialism. It's about nationalizing production. It's about creating and expanding the welfare state. It's about this idea of social and economic justice.
If that's so true, then why is it that when in the Clinton administration they reformed welfare as we knew it,
Yes.
and they created corporate welfare? Is one better than the other? Today we have corporate welfare,
Right.
and the oil companies, that's one of them. $4 billion in subsidies to
Yes.
companies that don't need it when we have a deficit that our children's children are going to have to pay for? Come on.
It's all costing us money.
And remember,
It all
the
costs
rich.
us money.
Look at Romney. It's not that he's a Republican, because as an independent, I don't care about the parties, because they failed, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But those are going to be our choices. It's probably going to be Romney and Obama. I mean, I'm saying it's probably because just in case this is a small percentage, but we know it's going to be that.
Right. Right.
So we look at it this way: Romney paid about 14% in federal income tax, multi-million-dollar money being hidden in the Swift banks and in the Caribbeans. Okay, the average taxpayer pays 26 to 29%.
Right.
So do we want a president that hides and pays less? How does he get into? It's the loopholes. And who create the loopholes? The Congress.
Of course.
Through the lobbyists.
Well, they're mostly rich people. I mean, the people in Congress, I mean, most of them are very wealthy. So, everyone looks after their own, right?
Don't think
and they laugh at us while they do it.
That's right. Don't think that there are no rich Democrats out there, because they are.
Of course. Of course.
There's some on both sides.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, the whole, now Republicans, of course, call it class warfare.
That's so lame.
It is lame, but it works. If you listen to conservative talk, if you're someone who listens to Rush Limbaugh all day, you're going to believe whatever he says.
That's all he talks. It's
Of
like
course, yeah.
It's like embedded in your brains. I'm going to brainwash you. If you say it long enough, you're going to end up believing it.
Yeah. Well, here's what I think about Mitt Romney, and I haven't really heard anyone else articulate this. This is my thing. This is what I think people need to understand. When you think class warfare, and when you think that people who oppose Romney oppose him because he's rich, it's not about being rich
No,
in
not
itself.
at all.
Here's the
I respect that part. They've earned it.
Right. Here, well, he was sort of inherited his money, but
It doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter.
His father earned it. Somebody earned it.
But here's why it does. Why I think it does matter, at least on a psychological level, on a subconscious level. I think, and this isn't anything against him necessarily in and of itself, but I think the average American, and I think this is probably generally true of both Democrats and Republicans, probably more so with Democrats, but I think Americans like the idea of a president, of a leader, not just as in terms of the presidency actually, but any leader. I think Americans like the idea of a leader who at some point in his or her life has had to struggle at least a little bit or felt a little bit of stress financially. Romney's been rich all his life. He was born into a wealthy family. Unlike a lot of other rich people who built their fortunes or perhaps inherited them at some point, but at some point in their lives, they struggled. Now, it doesn't make Romney a bad person that he never had to struggle. It's just the circumstance, and good for him. Somebody's got to get lucky coming into this world. But here's the thing. I think Americans like the idea of a president who at some point has struggled at least a little bit, so that president has at least some concept, even if it was so far in the past that it's difficult to still maintain that sense of empathy for the average American.
That's where that rule comes. Always remember your roots.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to know what it is to have and to have not.
Right.
If you've always had not, you don't know what it is to be wealthy. If you've always had and never had not, you never know what it is to be poor. Now,
yeah.
What I like to speak about my story is there was a time that I was earning $65,000 a year and single.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not rich, but as a single person, I knew what it was to have money.
Yeah.
Today I earn a little over $8,000. There's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to go back to my roots. Was raised with 12 kids, poor family. We always have what we needed.
Right.
Learn to manage.
Right.
I have gone back to my roots and learned to manage.
Right.
I couldn't have done that if I was always rich and all of a sudden became poor.
Right. Exactly.
Or if you're poor and all of a sudden you become rich. How many people who win the lottery who were poor and they either commit suicide or they're not happy and they waste their money? Money is, to an extent, can be the root of all evil because everything needs a balance.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just.
Right. So I don't begrudge Romney his money.
I don't.
But
What I begrudge is that he's paying 14% and he hides some of his
Right.
money.
Exactly.
And that's what we want for a president?
That's going to hurt him. That's going to lose him the election, among other things. It really will. I truly believe that.
You know, I want to make a comment here. There's something that happened this week at the Tea Party that QCE News, by the way.
Oh, yeah. You should tell us a little bit about that event.
Well, it was
on
3.5
Sunday.
hours, and it is going to be put on the air this week. I was ready to put the first hour and a half today, and I realized that when they put it together, they forgot one of the cameramen, and that's to me, that's a no-no. As an independent, I believe in being very fair, and so we're going to burn that disc and add that person who actually did the camera. And you know, everybody deserves equal rights, and that's the way. That's how independent I am. But what I want to say is that I'm losing my frame of thought now. What I wanted to say was that some of these candidates that are running for office, it doesn't matter what party, but running for office, they seem to think that they are actually better than others. But then you hear them speak, and you ask, I asked a candidate for governor this week about the cost of gas. Response was, well, I'm running for governor. Let me run for governor. That's not a New Hampshire issue. That's a federal issue. Excuse me? Everybody in New Hampshire has to buy gas.
All politics is local, as
it affects us.
As Pat
So are you trying to tell me, sir, that if you become governor, that you will not deal with the federal bureaucracy that affects our state?
Yeah.
Our communities? Oh, I didn't say that. Sounds like it, doesn't it?
Plus, it's a dodge on his part because it's not strictly a federal issue because states have gas taxes.
So his response was, you've always been so straightforward. You're so tough at asking questions. That's why I'm an independent. That's why we want a media service in QCE News that goes to look for the truth, not these half-truths.
Right. Absolutely. By the way, I forgot to open the chat room, so I'm doing that now.
And I got to go take care of the blackness.
So, okay. So we may have, Glenn's is going to check on the picture. By the way, I also have Skype open, IPM Nation, if anyone wants to join in the conversation and Skype with us. I'll finish reading this Alan West article, just a couple paragraphs left. Alan West from Florida, he first talked about Progressive Caucus Democrats being communists in response to a constituent's question last week at a town meeting in his Florida district. His remarks sparked comparisons to the 1950s Red Scare rhetoric of then-Senator Joseph McCarthy, who launched investigations into claims that communists had infiltrated the government. Progressive Caucus co-chairman Representative Paul Grijalva and Keith Ellison issued a statement at the time accusing West of polarizing the country, accurately. They had no further comment following West's remarks on Tuesday. West also has turned the controversy into a fundraising pitch to fellow conservatives, asking them for their help and repeating his belief that members of the Progressive Caucus were akin to communists. That kind of inflammatory language and speech is not helpful.
How much of this, when you read, I read this all the time on my computer because as a reporter, you need to have both sides of the story. So I belong to organizations that are on the left and the right so I can get the information. So then I can do what you just did and analyze it. Yeah. You know what? A lot of it is bothersome, but if I were to let it bother me every day, my golly, I would be depressed.
Yes.
So in a sense, you had to take this with an ounce of sugar or an ounce of whatever.
Grain of salt.
Grain of salt. Because a lot of it is rhetoric. What's bothersome is all it takes is one person to take it the wrong way and react and do an action that would be destructive.
Yes.
And in this day and age, we all know it happens.
Yes, absolutely. There was some good news recently, Glenn, and I think this is something you agree with me on. Connecticut has overturned the death penalty.
They have? I didn't know that.
Yes, the governor there.
When did that happen?
That was this past... I think the state legislature voted on it end of last week.
And the governor signed it?
Yeah. Actually, I want to, because I don't have it in front of me, I want to grab the name of the, because I forget the governor's name.
Put down Connecticut governor, yeah.
Because I want to, Malloy. what's his first name? Dannell, which is an unusual name, or maybe it's Dannel. It's Dannel. Dannel P. Malloy. He's a Democratic governor for Connecticut. They've, I believe it's now 30 down and 20 to go in terms of outline the death penalty.
You mean there's
repealing it?
There are 30 states.
We have 20 states left that still have it. Doesn't mean that all 20 of them actually actively use it.
Is this the first repeal in a long, long time?
No, it's been this is the fifth one in the past 5 years.
Oh,
so we're averaging one a year.
So it's going the opposite then.
Yeah, we're making progress with getting rid of it. We're one of the very few in modern industrialized nations in the world that still does this.
But there is two sides to this story as well. Like, I don't like the idea that if you commit murder and I keep you in jail all your life, I got to pay for you. Right. But I also am not any better or less of I'm not less of a monster or inhumane by killing you for it. Two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, weren't we raised that way?
Yes.
An eye for an eye? I mean, yeah, to an extent, yes, but how far are we going to carry this? So it's come to a point that, you remember years ago, if you committed a severe crime and the cops came at your house, you got caught, you get your hands behind your back and you got arrested and you dealt with it.
Right.
Today you have people, they're not concerned about what happens if they shoot an officer. Look what happened in Greenland. He just shot himself. Right. Took his girlfriend with him. How cowardly is that?
Oh, absolutely cowardly. Well, I oppose the death penalty, but actually for different reasons than you do. I actually would be okay with the idea of executing someone for committing murder, because I think I would be okay, if not for one thing, but I would be okay with it because I think the punishment should fit the crime. So if you're someone who goes out and commits a murder in cold blood, or, for example, shoots a cop, yeah, we probably don't need you around. So in principle, I would support the death penalty. But here's the problem that is unsolvable. It is not a perfect system.
Nothing is, though.
Right, exactly. The system isn't perfect. People are fallible. People make mistakes. The system will never be perfect for that reason. And therefore, as my friend, the late, great Stephen James Blake used to say, unless you have the eye of God, you can never be 100% sure. There are documented cases, I think it's in the hundreds now,
it is.
Documented cases in this country where people have been sentenced to death for murders that they were convicted of, where we later find out, in some cases,
it has nothing to do with it.
Right. In some cases, we find out after the fact, after they're already dead. Oops.
So what did we do? We actually murdered an innocent
Exactly.
person.
And that is why.
That makes us better people, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, wow. Great. Yeah. That is why I will never support the death penalty. That is why I think the death penalty is fundamentally evil. It disgusts me. As you can tell, it's a hot button issue with me. I've been railing against that since the start of this program. I despise the death penalty for that reason. It is barbaric. It is evil. It is wrong.
I will say, Matt, though, that with today's DNA testing, though, they are finding in fact, that's how they're finding a lot of innocent men and women who have been murdered it is a murder, as far as I'm concerned, because they've been killed to the electric chair or whatever, because they were proven to have killed somebody else, and to find out when they get the DNA, it's too late, they're dead. We've already killed you.
Right.
And you had nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
Wow. What kind of remorse is that?
This is why I say, if you support the death penalty, then you actively support the execution of innocent people, because it happens. There's no getting around it.
Too often.
Yes, it happens too often. And this is why I feel that there is a contradiction, a self-contradiction within the very logic itself of the death penalty. The logic actually collapses in on itself, and here's why. This is where the contradiction is. If you support the death penalty, it's because you value the sanctity of human life so much that you believe that someone who violates that sanctity deserves the ultimate punishment, because you value that sanctity of human life so much, and rightfully so. But how can you simultaneously in your mind value the sanctity of human life so much that you think anyone who violates that deserves to be executed, and yet you somehow, in your brain, at the same time, don't value the sanctity of human life enough to be concerned that sometimes people are executed who didn't actually do it. How do those two things coexist in the same brain?
That's right. You know what's
it's self-contradictory.
You know what's even worse is for people, I'm Catholic. I'm not going to apologize for it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm trying to prove is that I do not believe in abortion.
Mm-hmm.
But there are exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
If the mother is raising other children and there's a choice between losing the baby and the mother.
Oh, yeah.
It's
just common sense, yeah.
If it's in rape or incest, who am I to make that judgment?
Right.
Now,
exactly.
Here we are. We have people who are totally against abortion, and they ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to commit murder through the death penalty. What is the difference? If you really, really, really value life from the conception to death, you're committing the death.
Right. Again, it's the same thing. It's like
you're pulling the electrical thing, or you're putting in the shot.
Right.
What's the difference here?
Right. Yeah. It's the
How
same.
hypocritical can people be?
Exactly. I value the sanctity of human life so much. I oppose abortion. But yeah, you want to kill that guy
and they
because
talk about values?
You might be guilty. I know. Well, that's the other thing too that drives me nuts. Is so many Christians.
I don't buy it.
And please understand. I know I'm speaking in generalizations here. I realize that a vast majority of this of Christians do not support the death. Not a vast majority, I'm sorry, but a lot of Christians do not support the death penalty. But a lot of Christians do. There are a lot of pro-death penalty Christians, and that is also, in my opinion, an enormous self-contradiction.
Basically,
pro-death penalty Christians, would Christ have approved of executing people? No. Does that make any sense? I mean, I'm sorry. It's been a long time since I've looked at a Bible. I went to Catholic school from grade 2 to grade 8, and believe it or not, yes. And, I was raised Catholic. The version of Jesus Christ that I learned about in the Bible, not to speak for the dude, but I'm sorry. The guy I learned about in the Bible, I cannot imagine that he would approve of executing people.
So you're cool. You call him the dude.
I call him that dude. I call him that out of respect because, Christ was a great dude. He tried to teach us a lot of good things that a lot of Christians ignore, quite frankly.
I don't really think that it has basically nothing to do with being a Christian or non-Christian, because look at the other side of the coin. You have a certain side, the fanatic Muslims, who hate Americans so much, even though the Quran says you should not kill people, they're going to kill you. So, it doesn't matter if you're Christian or non-Christian. I think it operates on both. There's too much hate in this world.
Oh, absolutely.
It's all about the hate mongers.
Yes, absolutely. But
that's the Bible of the fittest here.
Yes. But so I despise the death penalty, and every time it gets repealed in another state,
it really bothers me, Matt, when someone tries to tell me how they should control morality. And then you look at them and say, oh, and what do you have to say about yourself?
Right.
Oh, yeah, you cheated on your wife. Oh, yeah, you did that. You cheat on your taxes. Morality? You're right. You go see strippers. You gamble. And you do it. There's nothing wrong in gambling, but you do it to the point that your kids are starving because you're using that money to gamble instead of taking care of your own family.
And some people think there is something wrong with gambling.
Yeah, but some people who talk about morality don't even know what it means. Not when you look at their own lifestyle and saying, you have something to talk about? How dare you? Take care of your issues and I'll take care of mine.
Right.
I mean, it's gone too far. Again, we need to come back to a balance.
Yes, absolutely.
Look at our kids. If you had kids and you tapped your kid on the fanny and said, go kneel in the corner, it was okay. You weren't hurting the kid.
Right.
Today, they'll report you.
Yes.
And the state can take away your kids, and you can go to jail for beating your kid. A tap on the fanny.
Oh, yeah.
Since when did that hurt? Or kneeling in the corner.
Right.
We've gone too far. Let people raise their kids. And if they're going to shake the kid and really hurt them physically, that's another story.
Right.
We're not talking about that here.
Right.
We go too far to the left or too far to the right.
So are you on the abortion issue? I want to go back to abortion for a minute because I did an express edition on my show recently where I basically spent 28 minutes, and obviously I won't do that now because we're almost out of time, but I'll summarize for you. I find it offensive, and this comes up a lot on rock, paper, hand grenades. Last week we had Kurt Walper, who's the head of New Hampshire Right to Life.
Yeah.
I find it personally offensive because I'm pro-choice. I find it offensive when pro-lifers refer to those of us who are pro-choice as being pro-abortion.
That's so nonsense.
You agree?
Yeah.
I think it's offensive because it implies, and I understand why they do it. It is smart politically.
Well, yes.
It's smart
question.
politically, but it's not true. I'm pro-choice not because I like abortion. I don't know any pro-choicers who do. Now, of course, I understand pro-lifers think that Planned Parenthood loves abortion. They think Planned Parenthood is out there dragging pregnant people into the clinic and talking them into having an abortion. And they think that that's all Planned Parenthood does and whatnot. And I think Planned Parenthood gets unfairly caricatured. But look, I don't think abortion is right. But I'm pro-choice because I think, look, regardless of how I may feel about it, I think the correct way, if you want to eliminate abortion in this country, or you'll never eliminate it, but if you want to tamp it down, if you want to make it as rare as possible, you do so through education. You have to have sex education in schools, and I'm sorry, I know that Christians want to teach abstinence. That doesn't work. That's what they do in Texas, and Texas has the highest teen pregnancy rate in the country.
There's nothing wrong in teaching abstinence. There's nothing wrong in teaching safety as well.
I agree.
For communicable diseases. We've gone too far. We've
Right.
stopped one for another.
Right.
There's no balance.
The message needs to be abstain until you're ready and mature enough and responsible enough to do this. But if you are going to do this, do it safely.
Yeah.
So you eliminate, or at least cut down. You'll never eliminate. You cut down on unwanted pregnancies. You have to make, I know Christian conservatives have a hard time with this. You got to make contraception as available and as affordable as possible and as accessible as possible. Very important. These are ways, cut down on the unintended pregnancy and you'll cut down on abortions. Education and make the tools available to prevent unwanted pregnancy. If you were to outlaw abortion, outlaw it, this is what the result would be. We go back to a time when you have these, we've all heard the term back alley abortion. You will go back to a time when a woman, I apologize for being graphic, but when a woman would perforate her own uterus with a coat hanger to perform an abortion.
Or have someone not qualified doing it.
Yes, exactly. So
barbaric.
Right. So if you want to, I believe that keep it pro-choice, make it as rare as possible, but keep it safe and legal, because there are other ways to cut down an abortion. And by the way, if you look at other countries and look at statistics, you'll see that countries that are pro-choice, this is less of an issue. I think that, but I think that the pro-life movement needs to understand. And by the way, I'm not saying any of this because I'm trying to convince anyone, because I'm trying to turn anyone from being pro-life to pro-choice. Because that's not going to happen. No. If you're listening to me right now and you're pro-life, you're not going to be any less pro-life regardless of anything I say to you. And I understand that. And I'm not unsympathetic to the pro-life position. I think I understand it. And I don't fault you for that, and that's fine. But at least show pro-choicers the respect of referring to us as pro-choice, because we are pro-choice. We want women to have that choice. Whether we personally agree with it or not, we want women to have that choice, because we're not going to solve anything. We're going to make it worse if we outlaw abortion, in my opinion. And but that does not mean, look, I as a pro-choicer, it's not like I'm out on the street. I'm not out on Elm Street going up to pregnant women and saying, hey, make sure you abort that fetus. I am not pro-abortion. And when pro-lifers refer to me or anyone else who's pro-choice as pro-abortion, it is personally offensive to me. I am personally offended by it. And as Glenn knows from being around me all this time, I'm pretty easygoing. I'm difficult to offend. I'm passionate about what I believe in, but I'm difficult to offend. But being called pro-abortion offends me. Or as Kurt Walper refers to us as, the pro-aborts.
I will go again to the hypocrisy. I remember when we're talking morality again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When AIDS became an issue in the United States of America under the
Mhm.
Reagan administration,
Yes.
and there was no way they were going to fund the CDC,
Center for Disease Control,
that's
for those
right,
who don't know.
to solve this issue because
Right.
they were asking for it. Today,
They thought it was a gay disease.
yeah, which it's not. But
Right.
today, we spent, I think it's over $5 million, if it's not $5 billion. It's a lot of money to send that medication to Africa because we find out that it's not the men in Africa that are having the disease. It's mostly the women. And why? Because when people have a disease, it gets spread. How does it get spread? Human contact.
Mm-hmm.
And females are not subjected to it. They are subjected to it. They're human.
Of course.
And so again, it was all based on morality. And then you have to realize about abortion. All these kids that are in orphanages.
Mm-hmm.
And what do a lot of Americans do? They go to China,
Yeah.
Ireland, Russia, Africa to get their children. What happened to our own?
That's a very good point.
So you care so much,
Yeah.
but you can't even take care of those that have survived. You
Right.
value life. Do you really value life? You could be helping these children get a better education, a family life.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, you go somewhere else to get it.
Right.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
I believe in helping other people in other countries, but you basically got to take care of your own first.
Yes.
That's the basic rule.
I agree.
Or at least it should be.
I absolutely agree. Yes.
Again, it's called being hypocritical.
Yes. Yes, it is. Well, we'll begin to wrap up. It's just after 9 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone. I want to remind everybody, too, that after the live show wraps up tonight, you can watch it on demand, both here on IPMNation.com and on QCNews.com. And we'll also put up an audio podcast of the show, too. So if you want to download it, put it on your iPad or whatever. I've been told that I'm good to listen to on an iPod with headphones while working out because I make some people very angry. So,
Really?
so I'm good.
Bring up that blood
I'm
pressure.
good. I'm good. You know, with if you're lifting weights, if you're running on a treadmill, listen to my voice, and it's very different. You know, when I'm doing hypnosis, I speak in a nice, soothing voice. When I'm doing this show, I tend to say things like, "Don't call me pro-abortion."
Don't give him a heart attack now.
Who?
Anyone.
Oh, okay. Yes, that'd be good publicity.
No.
Someone had a heart attack while watching my show or listening
I
to
would
my
think
show.
not.
Well, you know, all publicity is good publicity as long as I spell your name right. There are exceptions, of course, but Glenn, thank you very much.
You're
Glenn R.J.
welcome.
Willett from QCE News and the Queen City Examiner. And let's remind the people again, the new issue is online.
Online at QCNews.com. Scroll down to the April edition of the online edition. Don't forget Friday night from 8 to 10. You will let a large gone global on QCE News. And on Sunday night from 9:30 to 11-ish. We never know what it ends. 11-ish. Verbal ejaculation. And there are more shows coming. Trust me.
Yes, and you also have the other version of your show, which people can watch online, which has a new name, correct?
As of this week, it's going to be called QCE News. Let it large gone global. I have dropped the local.
Okay.
Because we live in a global world.
Yes.
Let's accept that. Here we are. We have a state legislature and an automatic board. Again, last night, they was talking about how important it is for us to get jobs in our community that export. Well, for that to happen, you got to go global.
Mm-hmm.
So let's wake up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We're all part of the universe.
Yes. We are all interconnected. And hopefully soon we'll have Gary Hopper on the show. I have invited
That'd
him
be
to come
great.
on. Gary is a New Hampshire state legislator, and he is I co-host Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades with him Wednesdays at 6 p.m., which you can watch on IPMNation.com. And Gary's a great guy.
I also hope that people will join us this summer as we travel around New England and maybe some of the maritime provinces. That we are a global
Yes.
network.
Yes.
And that is reachable from where we live. We're
Yes.
so close to the Maritimes.
Yes.
That we can have some nice programs from different states in New England, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and as Washington, D.C., and as far away as Quebec, Montreal, Toronto. And there are some great festivals that go on within these two countries that are reachable
Yes.
for a one day or a weekend.
Yes.
And we're looking into some fabulous shows that you won't find in your community, but you might find in another community.
That's right. So be sure
So
to keep
join
an eye
us on the
that.
global network of QCnews.com.
A lot of good stuff coming up. That's going to do it for today's edition of, this week's edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed, the television edition for April 18th, 2012.
And you still have your Sunday edition.
Yes.
And that is?
But Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern is the live radio edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed, although not on for the next 2 Sundays.
Taking a break?
Yep, because this coming Sunday I'll be at an event in Haverhill, Massachusetts. At the Wei Chi Center, Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, who some IPMNation.com listeners are probably familiar with. And then the following weekend, I'll be in Buffalo, New York, for an event that Dr. Kevin is doing. So the next 2 Sundays will be taken up by Dr. Kevin. So I will not be doing the live radio edition. But of course, we have the television edition Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, and the express edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed, a 30-minute podcast of the show, which goes up every Wednesday and Friday.
How popular are you?
Pretty popular.
You planning on seeing any buffaloes in Buffalo, New York?
I'm a global superstar. I don't think there are any buffalo there.
There's a zoo there, so they might be. It's possible.
Oh, well, there we go.
Possible.
But
there
yeah,
are buffaloes here in New Hampshire on some farms.
Are there?
They raise
we have
them,
buffalo?
yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I did not know that. Well, perhaps I'll see some buffalo. Anyway, that's going to do it for tonight's show. Thank you, Glenn, and QCnews.com. Absolutely. And thanks, everybody, for watching. And we will see you next week. And we're going to wait for Glenn to go flip the switch.
We do it all here, right?
That's right. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.